Welcome to the deep dive into the design of the two Witherbloom Deans from Strixhaven. Valentin of the Vein and Lisette of the Root are two cards in one. Together they are Witherbloom colored and together they represent the two sides of Witherbloom. If you generalize these sides, you get life and death. But I think it's a fun exercise to look at how we could break the basic Witherbloom identity with these two unique characters here. This card is double-faced, which means that you can choose to use one of the two sides whenever you play these. Otherwise the front side, which is Valentin, will be chosen. Valentin, Dean of the Vein, is a 1/1 for 1 that has Menace and Lifelink, making him a great attacker. His ability says that if a non-token creature from an opponent dies, it gets exiled instead. Then you may pay 2 to create a pest, making for a lot of value on this cheap good attacker. Lisette, Dean of the Root, is a 4 mana human druid with a great 4/4 body. Her flavor says, life is as fleeting as it is vibrant. Embrace the brief blessing of a flower before it withers. Her ability states that whenever you gain life, you may pay a mana. If you do, you may grow each of your creatures with a +1 counter and they all gain trample for this turn. Interestingly powered. Both pieces were made by Jesper Icing, whose art often seems to be inspired by fairy tales, which are very much linked to black and green mana, at least in my mind, but also on most of his cards. Let us start with the mechanics today, because these share a great part of the story of these two Deans. Lisette is a great creature on her own. How she can be this strong is beyond me, but I am guessing she uses her magic to be really vital and healthy. Her ability works with life gain. Whenever you gain life for just 1 mana, she strengthens all of your creatures, including herself. This means that she prefers for you to have many creatures on your side. It also means that she does not forget that she is a living creature too. She is not afraid to strengthen her own body. She values and wants to help all life grow, including herself. So what does the life gain mean? Well, every time you extract life, she helps spread that power around to all creatures you control. But more importantly, life gain on Arcavios is mostly gained by sacrificing pests, showing us that this green side is not only about keeping everything alive, it is about strengthening all life that has value, for the greater cause of Mother Nature. Let us look at our vampiric friend again. Valentin, Dean of the Vein, is not only about drinking blood. He does have the lifelink that all vampire creatures use to show us that they suck, but then instead of capitalizing on being alive, he capitalizes on death. Whenever something dies with a little energy, he can make that death into a new pest, showing us that he might want creatures to die, but then he creates new life from that death. Together, these two Deans capitalize on every death of a pest. Together, they give you the opportunity of creating a new pest whenever something from your opponent dies. And then, when you gain life, you can grow all your small critters. Together, they care about the ecosystem. They know all life needs to cycle on, but they also know how to use that cycle to enforce nature's growth. The apex of Witherbloom actually follows the same philosophy, but does so with more grandeur than its Deans. Beledro says that with 10 life, he can revitalize a whole ecosystem, showing us that this elder dragon has indeed mastered its school's ways. Another Witherbloom colored card, not from Strixhaven, that emphasizes this philosophy is the very popular Death Sprout. This instant grows a tree from a creature's death. Its flavor has Fresca explaining, "They say nothing lasts forever. I say everything lasts forever, just not in the same form," showing us the older Golgari side, where the colors were just about the cycle of life. Now, Witherbloom is about the actual ecosystem around that life and using the whole power of it for certain goals. You might now ask yourself, what goals do the Witherbloom strive towards? Well, Lisette's one seems as simple as you might think. It is to spread life, according to Wizards itself. But let's look at one of her quotes in the magic story. Nature, Lisette had explained, is drawn to balance. Magic is simply a way to slightly alter this balance without destroying the elements you're working with. The key is to start small. A mountain can rest on a single pebble, and an ocean begins as a drop of rain. Her philosophy is that you never have to destroy a component, as long as you use it for whatever you are creating next. Meaning that as long as you can use your resources, even when you use it for yourself, its life is never really ended. Lisette is also seen saving some lives and even offers to make a new leg for Will. We even see Lisette telling us that all plants can teach us more than you might think. She is a bit of a slow unpacking channel, but then with nature, which I appreciate, of course. Her own flavor, of course, also nods towards valuing life before it withers. Learning from something's life is another way of ensuring it was not wasted. Then there is our vampire friend again. Apparently, he uses life for himself more than Lisette would like. According to Wizards, in the story it becomes clear that Lisette actually embraces strengthening herself. Valentin does take some blood vials for himself that were meant for research, and he has been called greedy by his students before. But his mechanics do betray a soft side. We do not get to see him very often in the stories, and he does state that he does not need friends. But Lisette still notes that she is her friend, again showing us that she appreciates him for his actual philosophy and kind heart. How do we know of his kind heart? Well, he feeds his pests. But also, in the story, we see him telling Dina about her mistakes. But then when she decides that she might better leave, Valentin says, "You do know that this is an institution of learning, eh?" said Valentin. "I trust that you have learned something this night. That you are the student, and we are the instructors. We painstakingly assemble lessons, and you follow them to the letter. Venturing outside of that dynamic is fraught. Such a lesson will be valuable in your future coursework." Dina says, "So, can I stay?" He grunted. Above all else, Strixhaven is a place for new beginnings. Often that comes in the form of second chances. None of us are faultless, Miss Dina. He paused and clacked his fingers together. And I am among the last who deserves to chastise others for their missteps. He kind of hints to himself having started out wrong and bettering his life here. He also shows us that although he seems hard, he cares for his own students and supports their ambitions. Knowing that there is more to these two characters than life and death, let us look at the art. Jasper Eising's art is often full of little Easter eggs and tells us a very nice story when you continue your staring process. Here we might first see Valentin's face, which does look mischievous. It distracts us from his glowing hand, from which bones splinter around it. And lastly, we see these marrows flying towards us. His own armor is made out of bones too. And lastly, we see the giant dragon skeleton in the blue faded background, which Dean Valentin has been feeding to his pest babies. This must have been a grueling sight. With Lisette's, we might be drawn in by the light and then a small green butterfly that springs forth from her druid's spiky hand. We also see the same light beneath the roots of the tree she is working with. But we actually see another side of her too. In the story, Lisette asked Dina whether she was going to the Prismari party. She pointed out all the other druids that were wearing fancy colored dresses. Well, Lisette's hair and fashionable shoulder pads betray Witherbloom fashion. It is colorful and seems naturally alien, showing us her connectedness to other humans too. Lisette values all life and does not limit that love to animals and plants, which I think is a nice philosophy. So, what is Witherbloom actually about? Well, it is about the connection with nature, respecting it, using it and growing its overall force. Then, with that nature we could do a lot of amazing things. But the balance should not be disturbed. If we were to just make thousands of pets, we would have an infestation eventually. But when we make sure that there are just enough, then life can flourish in the waves. In real life you might notice something like this too. Sometimes things die, sometimes they live. But you have to cut some leaves if you want the plant to thrive. This can be a hard lesson, but if we just remember to celebrate all life for however long it will last, we are already doing great. Life is as fleeting as it is vibrant. Embrace the brief blessing of a flower before it withers. Thank you for watching.